We welcome you to our program today. We're studying the book of Job. We'll look at the first part of the book of Job, Job 41, verses 1 to 11. And we'll study verse by verse today. But before we do, a brief introduction to our lesson today. The Lord answered Job, verses 38 to 41. Chapters 38 to 41. In Job 41, we see the second speech continued. The chapter can be divided into two sections, verses 1 to 11 and verses 12 to 34. We'll look at the first part of that section today. Leviathan. The term Leviathan is found in a number of passages, such as Job 3:8, 41:1, Psalm 74:14, 104:26, and Isaiah 27:1. The psalmist praised the Lord, writing concerning sea serpents and Leviathan in Psalm 74:13 to 14. The psalmist praised the works of the Lord, such as the Leviathan that God made to play in the sea, Psalm 104:24 to 26. Isaiah the prophet described Leviathan as the fleeing serpent, the twisted serpent, and the reptile that is in the sea, in Isaiah 27:1. As with the behemoth that we studied in Job 40, there are those who say that the Leviathan was a mythological creature. One may read of a mythological sea monster in ancient literature. However, why would the Lord describe real animals only to conclude his speech with two mythological creatures? The Lord made behemoth, Job 40:15 and verse 19. He also made Leviathan, did he not? In the Genesis account, on the fifth day of creation, God created great sea creatures. Genesis 1:21. Some versions say monsters. Could Leviathan not have been included along with the other great sea creatures described here in this creation account? Of course it could. Genesis 1:20 to 23, then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures, and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. You think about how much of the sea is still unexplored even today. But you think about how God created great sea creatures, and every living thing that moves with which the waters abounded. What was this great sea creature? There are different suggestions, different ideas. The most common suggestion for the identity of Leviathan is the crocodile. Some Bibles in their footnotes read the crocodile. However, there are details of the description that do not fit the crocodile. While the crocodile is a powerful animal, it can be captured and it can be overcome. What animal adequately fits the description for this great animal? As with the behemoth, perhaps the reason why no animal today fits the description is because the animal is extinct. Some people suggest that Leviathan might have been some species of dinosaur. What was Leviathan? A footnote for the New King James Version, the text that we're using for our study, states, a large sea creature, exact identity unknown. It is true that while we do not know the exact identity of this animal, whatever it may be, it is indeed a powerful creature. And we'll begin our study today with the indomitable, the unconquerable Leviathan, verses 1 to 11. As you study the passage, what would you say the creature was in Job 41? Job could not conquer Leviathan, we see in verses 1 to 3. And that even if he could capture him, which he could not, what would he do with him? Verses 4 to 6. Job could not hope to overcome him, according to the Lord, verses 7 to 10. And so the Lord concludes in verse 11, who then is able to stand against me? If one cannot stand against this creature of my creation, then how could you hope to stand against the Creator himself? Verse 1, let's look at this passage today. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? The Lord returns to question Job, with each question requiring a negative response. Leviathan could not be subdued or captured by man. Job could not draw out Leviathan with a hook, nor could he lower a line to snare Leviathan's tongue. To draw out is to extract from the water. Job was not able to pull in Leviathan with a hook and line like he could a fish. Verse 2. Can you put a reed through his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? And Job could not put a reed through Leviathan's nose or pierce Leviathan's jaw with a hook. He could not subdue Leviathan by any of these means. Verse 3. Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak softly to you? Even if Job could capture Leviathan, how would he respond? How would Leviathan respond? Would he make many supplications to you, Job, for his release? Would he plead with you? Would he beg you? It's not as though he would humbly appeal for mercy. He would not speak softly to you. As you study his description, his characteristics are anything but soft. Verse 4. Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? The Lord points out that Leviathan will not make a covenant or agreement with you, and you will not take him to be your servant for life. Even if you could capture him, you could not domesticate him or tame him to be your servant for your life. Verse 5. Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you leash him for your maidens? The Lord says to Job, you will not make him a pet out of Leviathan. You will not play with him as you might play with a bird, or put a leash on him for your maidens to lead about. This word maidens can also be translated as young women or young girls. Ruth 2:23, or young girls, 2 Kings 5:2. Can you imagine the sight of these maidens leading around Leviathan? Of course not. No way. Verse 6. Will your companions make a banquet of him? Will they apportion him among the merchants? Job's companions will not make a banquet of Leviathan. They will not feast upon him or have him for supper. In 2 Kings 6:23, the word is rendered in a sense of to prepare, like to prepare a feast. Or in Deuteronomy 2:6, to buy. So will your companions make a banquet of Leviathan, or prepare him for your feast? Or will you sell or buy him? No. He continues, he says that they will not apportion him among the merchants. They will not apportion or divide and share him among these sellers, these traders who might bargain or barter. Verse 7, can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? No. The Lord points out, you cannot fill the skin of Leviathan with harpoons so that he cannot get away. Some other translations read barbed irons. So picture these harpoons, these spears with barbed ends, be able to use to pull it in. Nor can you use fishing spears to spear his head as you might spear the head of a fish. You can't do it. Verse 8, lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. Never do it again. The Lord gives the imperative. He says, lay your hand on Leviathan. Remember the battle or the war, and never, ever do it again. Any attempt to capture or to subdue Leviathan would teach that person a hard lesson, a lasting, enduring lesson that they would never forget. If you lay your hand on him, you will soon forget. You will soon regret it. Verse 9. Indeed, any hope of overcoming him is false. Shall one not be overwhelmed at the sight of him? The Lord points out to Job, you have no hope of overcoming Leviathan in battle. If you were to fight him, you would lose. Any expectation of man to overcome Leviathan is false. It's vain. A man is overwhelmed even at the sight of Leviathan. The Lord says, the sight of him will lay you low. That's all it would take. Verse 10. No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand against me? The Lord says that there is no one so fierce that he would dare stir Leviathan up. Even those who are fierce, given to fighting, would not dare provoke Leviathan. The reason, or the Lord reasons, who then is able to stand against me? If man would not stand against Leviathan, how then could man ever hope to stand against the Lord, the Creator, who made Leviathan? Job 40, 15 and 19. We see how God made Behemoth. He likewise made Leviathan. If you cannot stand against this creature of creation, how could you ever expect to stand against the Creator himself? The term for fierce is also translated as cruel in various passages. For example, at one time, Job had told God, you have become cruel to me. The text here reads stirs, so the idea of arouses or wakens, to agitate. One would not agitate Leviathan. Verse 11, one would not provoke him. The Lord says, who has preceded me, that I should pay him? Everything under heaven is mine. Job felt as if God owed him an answer. Job suffered greatly. However, the Lord was under no obligation to answer him. The Lord asked Job, who has proceeded, come before the Lord, so as to put him under any obligation. The Lord was under no obligation to pay man, as everything under heaven belongs to him. Leviathan too belonged to the Lord as his creation. In the following verses, the rest of the chapter, the Lord continues to describe Leviathan. As in other passages of the book, we see poetic language used in his description of this great creature. Next time, Lord willing, we'll continue with our study. We hope that this has been helpful in introducing Leviathan and in noting a few of the characteristics of this great creature, showing the true greatness of God. We encourage you to seek the Lord in all that you do and continue to study God in his word. Thank you for being here today.